I guess I want to introduce our speaker for tonight, and if you haven't had an opportunity to see his photography, you're in for an incredible treat. Will is a very accomplished photographer of the little things on the mountain, the plants and the butterflies. He's an incredible observer, and he's been here for more than 25 years in the Missoula area, and he's spent a lot of time out just observing things in various natural areas in Missoula. And that's turned out to be a boon for the community because his observations have helped other people and himself protect those areas and set them aside as open space or natural areas. He did quite a lot of observation in the rattlesnake area, which led to its designation as a national recreation area. He also looked at the Garden City Islands, and those are those islands that when you stand at the Boone Crockett Club by the Higgins Street Bridge, right now they're underwater, but they're seasonally flooded, and he saw more than 100 species using those islands. And the real value of those islands as wildlife habitat were basically documented by Will, and now they've been protected as a wildlife sanctuary for the city. And finally, he spent incredible hours on Jumbo, and you'll hear a lot about that tonight, and he was real active in the campaign, which helped raise the money for the open space. And now he says he's going to kick back and just enjoy sharing the natural history with people, and so.
Oh, about a year ago, there was an article in the Missoulian on butterflies, and historically that's the first time the Missoulian ever covered butterflies. In all the years they published their newspaper. And they covered a lot of other areas in the outdoors. So I'll pass this around to show you what it was like. I want them back. I don't have extras, unfortunately. There'll be, this was some of the initial work before it was checked by a butterfly expert, and we learned more. So there are a few mistakes as far as the butterflies listed here, so don't take it religiously as to what's found on Mount Jumbo. We do have now 60 species found on Mount Jumbo, which are very thoroughly documented with Albert Steve Fuller, an entomologist for the Department of Natural Resources. And he figures that we'll be able to find 90 species of butterflies. And that is pretty amazing because outdoor people and naturalists figured that maybe we might find 15 or 20 when we first started. So it really tells you you're missing a lot out there when you're out there. I'm finding out that those little black butterflies that go by, there's lots of different kinds of little black butterflies. And I used to think there was one white butterfly, it was a cabbage white. Well, I'm finding out there's many species of white butterflies because what you need to do is look underneath, because a lot of them are white on top with some blackish markings here and there, but underneath, wow, some of them are really something. One of the field guides you can see that I use is the Western Field Guide. And if you're used to using the Peterson Field Guide series, they're marvelous books. But I think the first thing you need to do is get them bound when you buy them, because it doesn't take that much to have your pages flying all over the place. So I would really recommend for beginners this book, and this particular one, not for eastern butterflies, a Field Guide to Western Butterflies. It's an excellent book. Like any butterfly book, it has some inconsistencies, probably a few mistakes, and the interesting part in dealing with Steve now, I'm finding that the butterfly world is spending a lot of time cleaning up their act because there's not that much agreement on common names and oftentimes scientific names. Steve Kohler indicates an author by the name of Miller is the one that he goes by. I haven't even seen the Miller book. If you want something fancy, you can go to Barnes & Noble and buy quite a book on butterflies for about $30. And they have color plates in here which cover the butterflies of North America. There's hundreds of butterflies in here. One of the things I have found that a lot of them are lifeless, and what happens is if you use a hand lens, you'll see why they're lifeless. You can even see the pins in some of them. So they were so they're specimens, they're not pictures of live butterflies. And some of these are pictures. I mean, these are pictures, and they have some drama to them. It's quite helpful in trying to identify them. And so I've already mentioned that there's with a butterfly there's 4 four segments to the wings. There's the forewings and the hind wings. Forewing on one side, hind wing on one side, and same on the other side. And then there's a bottom side to all that. And so you need to look for markers both on the top and the bottom. And it varies with the species, because I've been awfully excited because I go out to Steve and I have this marvelous photography underneath, because oftentimes underneath is where you get the identification. So the other day I took a checker spot out there, and you couldn't get any clearer focus on it. All kinds of vibrant color, and Steve said I need to see the top side because I can't tell you what it is. On the checker spots, oftentimes you need to look at the top side. So my underneath theory fell apart. I handed out some butterfly titles for books. Also, some of these aren't directly butterfly books. I have discovered Edwin Way Teal. I think he's got to be one of the most marvelous naturalists that we've had living in North America that has written about it. He has 4 books out on the 4 seasons, and his wife and him went on each journey for 30 or 35,000 miles in a car, and they would stop there and wander around or take a hike in the mountains. And he's a wonderful photographer, and I thought it was really heartwarming that you know, a lot of times the husband naturalist is out wandering around in the hills, and the wife's not supposed to go. And in this case, they went as a team on all 4 of the journeys, and his writing is delightful. And The Golden Throng is a book that he has written on honeybees. It's a whole book on honeybees. So one of the things that I'm saying here is that everything is connected to something else. You can't, in the natural world, study butterflies and not pay any attention to anything else. Or if you are, you're doing quite a clever job of focus, because inevitably, to learn butterflies, you need to know plants also, because after a while, you're going to wonder what they're nectaring on or how to find certain species. So you're going to have to look in certain habitats. Like I just found the hoary elfin on the east front range, and the way I found it is Steve told me to go find kinnikinick, because the whole life cycle is around kinnikinick. So if you are looking for the caterpillar or the pupae or the adult butterfly, you need to be in the vicinity of kinnikinick, because you can go in all these other habitats and look and look and look, and you will not find hoary elfins. You'll see all these butterflies that I've found so far later this evening. Pretty quick, actually. Okay. If you saw last Thursday's paper, I snuck the butterflies in again to the Missoulian, because I did an article on Greenough Park. I spent 7 days, 2 hours a day, taking field notes, and on the front page and on back is a coverage of that. And Sherry Devlin told me not to focus too much on butterflies, and I was pretty honest by that. It was hard. I wanted to write another article on butterflies, because the first article, she interviewed me. This time I got to write it. And look at the butterflies all over. I'll pass this around so you can look at it also. And then here pretty soon, by the time you get into it, I'm going to turn the lights out. So, where am I? I need binding for my field notes, too. I sometimes draw. Here of recent, I never drew before. And I have all kinds of scribblings about butterflies, and I'll pass this around so you can take a quick look at it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off what you're talking about.
Right.
I have a bunch of fruit trees,
Mm-hmm.
and the butterflies are always in the fruit trees. And I was wondering, Is there any chance that they could pollinate fruit trees like the bees?
I don't, maybe you can help me there, Jim. I don't know the pollination dynamics with butterflies yet at all. I do know that mourning cloaks come to apricot blossoms, and I see butterflies on fruit blossoms. But as far as evaluating how much pollination they're actually doing, I don't know. Because another thing that's going on with the butterflies, they use the fruit trees for shelter. The butterflies come on my apple tree or plum tree, and during a storm rest under the leaf. They lay eggs on the leaves of the fruit trees. I'm not sure what the spring azures are doing on the fruit trees or trees in general. I see them flying around. It's one of the ways I can identify a spring azure in the blue family is that I see them fluttering around trees, little blue butterflies. And that's a behavior that's different than the other blue butterflies. And almost every time it turns out to be the spring azure. But they just keep examining things, and I don't know whether they're looking for a place to lay eggs or exactly what they're doing.
Well, I know where I live up Green Creek. You don't see that many butterflies up in the scenery. There's a lot right on the fruit tree and the orchards.
Yeah, and do you know what kind they are?
I don't know. I haven't really identified that good.
Yeah, you just notice.
Better after the night.
Yeah, okay, you just notice their activity.
Or Saturday.
Does anybody in here know anything about the pollination dynamics? Because I started reading some pollination books from my botanist neighbor, and you need a botany dictionary to look up every other word.
Well, they go from blossom to blossom, so they could be pollinated.
Right, and it seems like also in the books they don't say much definitive. They talk a lot about theories, and I was even going to write an article about the pollination dynamics and also center on the white form of flowers and what part they played in things. And I just couldn't get enough solid information because I didn't want to write an article for the general public that had a lot of theories and a lot of tension with it, because I didn't think most people get that much out of it.
I say in my modest little book that plants do benefit from the pollination of the butterflies feeding and going from plant to plant.
Yeah, in general, I'm saying that butterflies definitely help with the pollination dynamics, but specifically, what they do for a fruit tree, I don't want to say. Sue, do you have any comment on that?
No.
Okay.
I think the flies and the bees is quite a bit of pollination. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with what butterflies
Yeah, and I don't know how much work there has been done, to evaluate the, who's doing the majority of the work with plants. Probably there's some isolated work, but when you start looking at, fruit's commercial, so.
I have about 70 fruit trees, so I'm
Yeah.
concerned that, I've never hired or bought hives in
Yeah.
to pollinate them. I just go by the natural.
Right.
Bumblebees.
Right.
Bumblebees are like, where's the 100 honeybees?
Right.
If there's
Okay.
they go sweet fruit.
Yeah, and probably since fruit's some of the fruit's commercial, there might be some place where you can find information, specific information on butterflies per se, and what they do for fruit trees. Another thing that I'm doing right now, since I know the plants fairly well, I'm starting to do an inventory of where the butterflies tend to go, which also helps you find them too. The Sarah's orange tip and the large marble go to the two different species of starflower. And in the draw on the east side of the mountain, it's unbelievable how many Sarah's orange tips you can watch if you're in the draw down at the bottom, and there's plenty of starflower on each side of the draw. That's one species. A lot of times I don't see too many of the females, but that's one species. The female and the males are just flying all over the place. They're very, very visible. And some of the butterflies go to some surprising places. Like, for instance, when I have been checking out the dead deer situation on Mount Jumbo, a lot of the mule deer fawns didn't make it through this very harsh winter, and the mourning cloak. comes to the carrion for juices and nutrients. And also I have seen butterflies on deer and elk droppings. From what I understand so far, they can secrete a substance to help draw nutrients out of the droppings, even if they're on the drier side. So, okay, I think what I'll do, I'll mention one other thing and then we'll start looking at slides. In the garden, if you want butterflies, I think what you have to do, where I live for the last approximately 10 years, there hadn't been a single pesticide or herbicide put in the yard. And one of my favorite stories is one day I panicked and thought of the awful ortho products because there were literally millions of aphids on our Carolina hedge. And fortunately for myself, I decided that I'd wait a couple weeks and watch and be patient. And so what happened is it wasn't long till the ladybugs moved in, and then it wasn't long till a family of yellow warblers came, and then a lot of chickadees and pine siskins, and before it was all over with, you were hard-pressed to find aphids. So what would have happened had I gone and got all the ortho products? I wouldn't have got to share that precious learning, and I would have killed a few things that I really wouldn't have wanted to kill had I dealt with it straight on. And so we don't have butterflies and birds flopping around crazily in our yard. And we have a lot of diversity through planting of perennials and herbs and native plants. And we have created a little mini ecosystem which has its own balance. And the interesting part too, I have found that when you plant something, if you're real patient, it'll discover where it really likes it best. You try real hard to put this plant in, you know, that you want because you want to draw in, say, fritillaries. And you can't get it to grow very well. Well, if you don't get too much into being heavy-handed, one day you'll wake up and you'll see the fritillaries over in this corner where this plant's doing really well. So, yeah, it's quite fascinating. When we came there, we were sold the property by its diversity because they knew that they were interested in the natural world. I hardly saw a bird in the yard. We were told that they only sprayed once or twice a week, that they were real open-minded about the spraying situation. I don't remember even seeing the cabbage white butterfly. Now, last year, late in the season, I started counting species. I got up to 30 species. Now, granted, we live next to Park and next to Mount Jumbo, so that helps us with helps connect things and bridge the gap because, I mean, they're not all generated out of this mini habitat, but they are coming through our property and stopping now, and even starting to leave chrysalises, and they're definitely laying lots of eggs, and you see a lot of caterpillars around now. This year so far, I've found 20 species of butterflies in the yard, so I think we'll find probably 40 or 50 species this year. And so there are some people that claim there's a beautiful Xerces Society book that's published, and some of the expert butterfly people from different corners of the world claim that we could pretty much reclaim most of our ecosystems by taking care of our yards. If we would bring diversity into our yard, we would gain a lot of what we've lost. Because they've got to have some place to go, and they've got to have the proper requirements. And we're pretty heavy-handed.
Do you have any cats or dogs?
We have them from the different neighbors.
Do they interfere in your backyard with them?
The only interference that gets me is them plowing through the plants sometimes and knocking them down. And the cats, it's not very pleasant when you have your hands in the soil and you find their little areas.
Well, I mean,
But they chase birds and everything. But if they get too intense, what I do is I have a nice big water pistol, and that's about all it takes. Sometimes I'll run at them, you know, to try to scare them initially, and some of them are easy, and some of them are they're smart, you know. They give you quite a little struggle, you know, before they'll back off and discover. I mean, I'm asserting that it's my territory. You know, they assert it's their territory, and I say it's my territory, you know. So I don't share too willingly with the cats and the dogs. And, but I mean, but take that lightly. I mean, there's dogs and cats in our yard from time to time, and I'm not out there chasing them day and night. But you know, some of them that want to hang around a little too much and are a little too destructive, I put some pressure on them. So, okay, let's look at some slides.
now, if there's certain rarities that are like going to the Rockies, could you let us know?
Okay.
Like for certain butterflies, if there are any in this region extremely?
Okay, I'll let you know if I know. Because one of the things happened to me is, and it explains it in the first Wild magazine, I ran around as a kid with a butterfly net and caught these butterflies and never did anything with them. I love to be in a sunny, flowery meadow, and I would look at them, and I felt like really free and wonderful out there in the meadow. And after I got a closer look at, I was just fascinated with their different colors and their beauty. I'd let them go. And I never had a collection or you know, looked at a field guide or anything. And a couple years ago, I got the idea for education and politics that we should switch from elk to butterflies. And if anybody's looking for the source of the initial idea of the butterflies for Mount Jumbo, you're looking at the source. I was the source. I went to Noreen Humes, who was wonderful to work with, the Jumbo coordinator. She thought it was a wonderful idea, and we worked together then and promoted the heck out of butterflies so that we got butterflies on people's minds too, not just elk of Mount Jumbo. And it really, I thought was nice to go from big to real small and work on that theme of diversity, because we were, I think, trying to protect habitat for future generations and for the land itself and its diversity. And so now as a community you can help work on that. Okay, lights out.
You may want to put your slides in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Science before you go.
Oh, when you're up here there's a lot of things you need to focus on, and I probably would have discovered that pretty quickly. Okay, I'm going to tone down on the talking because I've been talking quite a bit. I'll talk some, but I'll let you enjoy the beauty too. The silence is precious. I was trying to get rid of my thing here. I start out in the fall on Mount Jumbo. That beautiful red plant is leafy spurge, a noxious weed. Sometimes when you're wandering in the fall, you will find surprising creatures. Okay, so it overwintered on Mount Jumbo, and we're back to spring in this particular shelter. And this is what it became. That's a western tiger swallowtail. Here it's on mock orange, which will start blooming on Mount Jumbo any day now. Western tiger swallowtail. Notice that this one has two tails, a small inner tail. Has two tails on each side, so this is a two-tailed swallowtail. I've come to discover that there's at least 6 different species of swallowtails here. So when, you know, for years I just thought one big yellow butterfly went by and it was always just a swallowtail.
I want you to step away from that projector because the microphones are picking up on that.
Oh, you're actually getting something now on that?
Yeah, I am now.
Oh, okay, I didn't know you were. I thought all along you weren't getting a thing.
No, I am now.
Okay. I was showing you the bitterroot leaves and the elk dropping. This particular swallowtail is the Old World swallowtail, and this one's newly emerged. I love the fresh ones without the blemishes and all their beauty as far as color and pattern. And it was on elk droppings. The Old World on Degrassi, Montana, on a ridge line of Mount Jumbo. A lot of them only live 6 or 8 or 10 days, some 2 or 3 weeks, and some 10 months or so. They're, I guess, both fragile and very strong. They're a mix of that. And this is one that I'm not sure what happened to it. It's an Old World swallowtail, and it may have even just been blown off the ridge line into this pine. I couldn't find a spider or something, you know, working with it. This one I spent about 20 minutes pursuing in one small area, and every time I would go to hit the shutter button, it would just fly a few feet and land again. And this one is an anise, A-N-I-S-E, swallowtail. Notice the black eye spot dot right here is centered. And I didn't point it out in the Old World, but the Old World is not nearly as complete, and part of it is sitting over on the border on the inside. Guess what it is?
No,
It's a pale swallowtail, because you were laughing at two-tailed. And it reminds me of this story. One day I was out on Mullen Road, and a big redneck with a huge truck, you know, with those ones with the huge wheels, was looking way down on me in my little Volkswagen. And I was on the county road, but I was looking on his property. And he said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I'm watching birds. And I think I'm on the public road." And he said, "Well, what's that over there?" And I didn't know what to say to him because it was a yellow-headed blackbird. Because I figured he'd think I was some kind of wiseacre if I told him it was a yellow-headed blackbird. This is a tailless swallowtail. It has no tail. And you notice it's not yellow. It's called Phoebus parnasian. That's genus and species. All of a sudden I threw a scientific name in instead of a common name. Some of the butterflies you find out in the open grass, they're just like birds, you know. They have their habitat requirements and they set up their little territories, and you know, once you get to know more about their markings and their flight patterns and their behavior, food requirements, host plant requirements, then you tend to find them better. This one is a clouded sulfur, and because the clouded sulfur has a green cast to it, it's a female clouded sulfur. The next one you will see is a male clouded sulfur. And that's echinacea in the garden. Echinacea and Queen Anne's lace are the two plants that in our garden draw the most butterflies. And that's just 1 year's worth of inventory. I haven't seen very many of these. These come out pretty early. We're into the white family now. We went through the swallowtails. We went through the one and only sulfur I have photographed. And now this is the white family. This is a spring white. Notice it's pale yellow. Both the male and the female are pale yellow. Another thing I discovered about my first spring white, unlike some of the other whites, it stayed real low to the ground. It kept landing on the ground. I knew it was something different, but I didn't have a clue as to what it was going to be. Whoops, hit the wrong button. And that's the underside of the spring white. Up the draws. Remember I told you lower part of the draw. For some reason you'll see some in the middle, but you won't see too many in the middle, and you don't tend to see them up higher in the draw. If they go away from the draw, they tend to wind up on the ridge line or out in the open. This is a female Sarah orange tip. This is what she looks like underneath. She's a beautiful marbling pattern. So you can gain two species sometimes. You can see one on top and you can call it a such and such, and then later you can see one underneath and you can call it something else. Eventually you get to the point where they become one species. I don't know about other people, but I had a tendency at first just to look at the top. Never thought to look underneath them. The male. And that's the underside of the male. This is my favorite. You can see them for a couple hundred yards coming. Those orange tips, even though they're a very little butterfly, they really stand out.
And this is the orange tip?
Bueno?
This is the orange tip?
Yeah, orange tip, Sarah orange tip. This is a pair of them mating in Greeno Park. This is sort of a grayish underside, and this belongs to the western white. Now this is the Becker's white. Now here's one time where photography on the top helps you. Notice the black marking here with the white chevron inside. Coming to class, saw a Becker's white, a very old Becker's white, very faded. And I almost couldn't even make out that marking. Underneath, this particular Becker's white was more grayish like the western I just showed you, but the lime green had just faded that much. So it would have been easy to identify that as a western white instead of a Becker's white. So like anything else, you have to be careful about what you're watching. So Becker's, you got both best of both worlds, the black markings showing through on the underside, and you can see that lime green pattern. I would think that that's a leaf pattern to help blend in with the foliage. There's butterfly people in the United States, and this is one of my dreams to come true later, because I'm a very determined person, and I'm sure it will happen. And that's to be able to go out on a butterfly walk on any kind of a day, no butterflies flying necessarily, and point out all kinds of butterflies. I'm starting to learn the art of picking them up in hiding. I picked up I had 5 sightings the other day on Mount Jumbo. They never moved at all, and 4 different species. So slowly but surely I'm learning to see them, because they're out there all the time. Where would they go? I mean, they're there. You just have to figure out how to see them. This one's kind of bland underneath, and I'm sure everybody has this one in their yard, the cabbage white. The shame of this one is that the checkered white is very rarely seen around here. It used to be found profusely all over North America, and this butterfly has done it a lot of damage. So we'll eventually probably find a checkered white for Mount Jumbo, but it's going to take a lot of work. This one has some more spotting showing through. This is a male, and it's resting on Queen Anne's lace in our yard. It was a cold day, and it just came there and hung out for the longest time. I have found a cabbage whites, you know, like I find them near dark. They'll come in the yard and they'll go under a leaf, and then in the morning I run out, you know, and there they are, still there. And then, you know, it gets warm enough eventually, and because the butterflies, they need 50 to 60 degree temperatures before they're actually going to move much. This is a veined white, or a mustard white. See, now here's a really old one. See how faded it is? It's lost a lot of its scales, and it almost looks transparent. Here's the underside. That's actually not the same butterfly, but that's the underside pattern, because that tattered when, faded and tattered when the underside was really faded also. This is a large marble. Now here's one that I spotted not moving. And you go out there and there's hundreds of penstemons around, and they may look easy sitting in here to spot that. But had you been with me, I would bet that frankly none of us would have seen it. You really have to learn how to see this way and how to focus this way. And I mean, it's just got to be a priority, because they blend really well. Large marble. Large marble. Some butterflies in the white family hang around pine trees, ponderosa in that case, the pine white. And this is one that does some damage to the pine trees in a cyclic manner. But it's also one that, you know, most of the time you don't have to panic that much. If you just let nature take its course, things will be okay. People looking to discover something, so let's give them something to discover. That was a monarch. This little devil, I have one picture of it. I chased it for weeks on the ground. Every time I'd try to take a picture, it would flit off. And this one is a small wood nymph. You're going to see a common wood nymph there pretty soon. Notice this spot here is slightly smaller than this one. And it's a smaller butterfly too than the common wood nymph by a little bit. This is another one I found hiding, or just hanging out. Now, the next shot I think you're going to find quite interesting.
Yep.
Some group activity. And I was wondering how everybody was connected, and the one was not really connected, because this is the next picture. While I was taking the picture, that one flew away. These are common ringlets. one that has more ringlets that you find with the common ringlet. These are probably right now about the two most common butterflies on Mount Jumbo. The common ringlet and the common alpine. And here's a story on what a struggle they have at times. Notice it has one of its hind wings missing, and it's still putting along. Last year I had a precious photograph that some of the most precious ones are the ones you don't get. I chased the Parnasian butterfly for half an hour, and now, as I said, I have to feel some guilty because the poor thing had practically nothing but body. There was practically nothing left of any of the wings. It was almost a body just flying around. Here I am harassing it, trying to get its photograph because it tells such a strong story. And the little devil was hard to photograph. I couldn't believe it had that much energy with that little left of itself. Sometimes when you're out, those bird droppings are bird droppings. Other times, those bird droppings can turn out to be viceroy or Lorquin admirals in the long run. See that bird dropping caterpillar? And this is really fascinating because this leaf has been folded up, and this is where this caterpillar overwintered. And you see the silk down here? It tied the leaf with the silk so the leaf wouldn't fall off in the fall, and spent the winter in there. And that's called a hibernacula, the shelter, the winter shelter. And then this is what eventually comes from some of those caterpillars, the Lorquin's admiral. The Lorquins just started flying. We have lots of Lorquins in our yard, and a couple days ago I saw the first Lorquins. Lorquin, Lorquin'. And there's an older Lorquin's ready to go, right? Oh, that was funny that I could catch this. I never thought I would find a red admiral. I was born and raised around red admirals in Pennsylvania. I never thought I would find one here in Montana. They were very common back there. Here is a red admiral on Mount Jumbo. And here's its underside. Unfortunately, it doesn't have its forewing raised enough because there's a beautiful blue mark, and I think there's some reddish in there too on that underside of the hind wing. On a bicycle trip years ago in Canada, I was talking to a young woman, and while I was talking to her, a butterfly landed on her coat. This is the West Coast lady.
That's common, isn't
What?
it? Pretty common.
Not in my world. Jim, how common are they? Because
I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of them.
yeah, I didn't see a lot last year, and I'm not seeing a lot this year, but the next one's going to be pretty common, so that might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah, that works.
This one, okay? And the subtle difference is, well, one of the subtle differences is, see this right here? It's white, right?
What is that?
What color is it here? It's pale orange, right?
And that one's
Now it gets a little trickier than that too, that pale orange one, the West Coast lady. This one's a painted lady. The West Coast lady could turn out to be an American painted lady. And one of the main ways you tell that is you see that pale orange, but you look underneath the hind wing and you see two large eye spots on the American painted lady. So your West Coast lady can turn out to be American painted lady, or now I just showed you the West Coast lady, the painted lady, and talked to you about the American painted lady. Well, sometimes the red admirals and the West Coast ladies cross and create a named species.
What's the
Yeah.
purpose of this would seem like it's more bigger antenna. I think of the name of it.
Well, it's their sensory device, and the evolution of all the different creatures. You know, they evolve differently. You know, some have shorter ones, some have longer ones. You know, like these butterflies are brush-footed butterflies. They've practically lost their front legs, but they can taste their host plant through their front legs. So far they haven't evolved beyond that because there's still some need for longer front legs. So, I mean, I can't tell you specifically, you know, why this one would have longer and how that's worked to its advantage.
Does that help?
But I'm sure somehow it does work to its advantage, or it fits in with its you know, its pattern of refining itself through the years.
Birds are like the biggest predators, right? Birds are the biggest predators.
Well, birds is one of the main predators.
Yeah, I just worked that.
And what happens with a lot of the butterflies, they have different ways to get the birds to hit them in the wrong spot. You know, when you saw the swallowtails, they had eye spots down here. The bird pecks them there. It doesn't do them damage, you know, instead of pecks them up here. The hair streaks, they actually rub their wings together when they're sitting, and they have eye spots, you know, and so they get hit in the wrong area for damage. You know, chipmunk, his tail falls off, you know, when a predator grabs the back end of it. My first butterfly was on March 19th this year. Sometimes when I show this show, I don't talk that much, but I told you I wasn't going to talk that much, and I'm talking a lot.
So what was it?
So that's the way it is. It was the morning cloak, and it flew right across that snow patch, over the fence, and right by Betty DuPont's, north end of Greeno Park, 19th of March. Some of the butterflies, remember I told you they live to be 8 or 10 months old? Morning cloak is one of several that overwinter as adults. Now you think about that. You know, I always thought it was pretty impressive to know that a grizzly bear could crawl in a hole and overwinter. But I think it's a lot more impressive to think about a morning cloak crawling under some bark or in amongst some rocks as an adult butterfly and slowing its system down and coming through like a winter like this winter and fluttering around on March 19th. There are a lot of maple stumps in Greeno Park, and the overwintering butterflies. This is a satyr, S-A-T-Y-R, anglewing. We're consuming maple sap. Yeah, this butterfly also overwinters as an adult. And you can see it blends in with the bark quite well. These are all satyr angle wings. I was thinking about the gentleman's antennas some more. You know, the different butterflies go on different sized flowers, and that would be part of the dynamics because, you know, they would be able to feel. They don't need as much space to feel in some circumstances as other circumstances. I'd have to think about that a lot more. There's a lot I have.
Are there other eyes?
Huh?
They're like their eyes.
They're one of their senses,
Yeah.
you know, and they you know, like for instance, the other day there's a real small flower that I'm about to show you at the end, and I never thought anything would go on it. The flower is so darn teeny. You know, I mean, you got to get down on your hands and knees, and then you still barely notice it. And one of the little skippers, which is my favorite family, was on it with its proboscis out getting nectar out of that little flower. Just incredible. So if it needs some tactile senses, you know, for the plant, you know, the needs would be much reduced, because some of them go to bigger flowers than others. But there's lots of ins and outs to those kind of things, and I'm not that kind of a butterfly expert yet. Got a long ways to go. Because one of the things I'm sharing with you is basically, you know, I'm telling you what these are, but, you know, I'm just discovering what they are. You know, I'm running to Steve Kohler constantly to get more information to discover why I know they are what they are. And so, I mean, first of all, you gotta, you know, when you're starting, you gotta, you know, you can't read about them if you don't know what they are. First, you gotta discover what they are. That's where I started with the birds. You know, I didn't know much about behavior territory. I'd grab my field guide, and what I did at first on Mount Jumbo, when I first identified birds, I was with no one. So I would look through 300 or 400 colored pictures, trying to find this one bird I was looking at, and it's hard.
I think we all can sympathize. What is it?
Okay. So this is a slightly different angle wing called the horikama, or the hori angle wing. And it's another overwintering butterfly. And this is in the neighborhood, hanging upside down on a power cable. Now here's a spot where I saw on a cloudy day a mourning cloak go in to hide. And it crawled inside this mess, way inside. It went in here and crawled way back up in there. And I reached back up in there, tried to feel it or find it. And it went back up in there far enough I couldn't even find it. And so this is my first discovery of where they go to hide. So it told me that, you know, it may not be very easy to find their hiding places in the winter. Byron Weber, out in his carport, he had some bales of hay, and this spring he was moving them around, and he found out where one mourning cloak overwintered. It was overwintering on the end of his hay bale. When the mourning cloaks first come out, they go for sap from damaged trees or trees that elk and deer have rubbed and are oozing sap, or ones that are broken in storms. And here's a good example of the old and the new. Look how tattered this mourning cloak is. In fact, it looks like this fly is eating the mourning cloak, but the fly is actually gathering sap, and the mourning cloaks are gathering sap off the stump. So when the glassy, one of the first showy carpeting wildflowers, shows up on the ridge lines, wind-blasted ridge lines on Jumbo and Waterworks, then, you know, you'll find the milberts and the mourning cloak and some of the other overwintering butterflies racing to the hillside for nectar.
So these are early spring, that's when you catch them.
Yeah, real early spring, yeah. Well, you can still catch the mourning cloak. They live to be about 10 months old, and some of them are still flying because they fly around for quite some time in the spring toward early summer, mate and die. And then before the summer's out, you'll see a new generation, or late in the summer, early in the fall. Most of the butterflies you can't photograph head on because they can see thousands of fragments of the world. And they have a lot of eyes, little eyes, and in this big eye place. And
Scientific.
yeah, not too scientific. I'm a mix of not too scientific and scientific because I have a lot of general science courses, and I always found science boring. And so I've tried to figure out how to blend being a naturalist and a scientist at the same time. Okay, here's one at the end of the 10-month cycle. I just found it in the grass. It died. Notice it has its wings, or I mean its legs crossed, and it's got its wings folded back and in. That was kind of sad for me because, you know, I've been following them through the fall and thinking about them in the winter, reading about them, and then I saw them nectaring and you know, going to the maple stumps, and then one mated and no longer here. This is the Milbert's tortoiseshell, an overwintering butterfly that I've been talking about.
Will, are you finding very many that go to the spurge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's leafy spurge, and I try not to take a lot of pictures of butterflies on leafy spurge and knapweed, but plenty of butterflies go to both of those.
Do you see bees on spurge?
Mm-hmm. Here's a bark-like pattern on the underside of the Milbert's tortoiseshell. This one wanted to be photographed. This is a California tortoiseshell. Notice it has a dark border. The margins are dark. Now this one really blends in with the bark. The exposure is a little dark too. And it's pretty similar, but you notice those white spots on the hind wings on the top side? It's a Compton's tortoiseshell. Compton, C-O-M-P-T-O-N, apostrophe S.
Do the butterflies like all kinds of sap on like all trees, or I mean, like
Well,
there's sap that comes out of fruit trees too.
Yeah.
Always sap that comes out
Yeah.
certain spots on fruit trees, whether they're diseased or injured.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if they like, you know, all.
Well, I've seen them on maple and birch, and you know, ones that
Fruit trees too. I mean,
I haven't seen them on fruit trees, but I wouldn't be surprised at all about fruit trees. One thing I haven't found so far, I've been watching where the deer and the elk rub the conifers, and I haven't found any on pine sap yet. So I think it's mostly certain deciduous trees, and which is probably quite a number of trees and shrubs, deciduous shrubs, and probably a number of fruit trees too.
not the conifers.
Well, I can't say for sure. I mean, I'm just talking about my own personal observation. Sue, have you seen any on conifers? I just have never seen them on conifers. Huh? What did you say? Is that what you?
I just haven't seen them on conifers, more on the shrubs.
Uh-huh. This is our yard that I was talking about. It's a walkway of English lavender and different species of thyme. And the garden draws the fritillaries. This is a female great spangled fritillary.